This was my second choice of location today because the first place was really busy, and I don't know why I came here because every time I've come before I've never really seen that much, but it was nearby, so I thought I would give it a go, and we are gonna have a look for painting inspiration and wildlife while we're here. I'm at a spot now where the road is on that side and then there's a nice little pond over that way, and it's really weird to be standing in the middle and hear the traffic over there but then see the loveliness over this way. That's where we're gonna go and have a look, see what we can see. If you saw last week's video, then you'll have known I was talking about these catkins and wondering if they might be hazel, and I think I found out that they are, because over here, if I can film this tiny little bit, this section that has just gone really blurry, give me a moment. That right there is the female flower of hazel, the tiny little red bit at the end, which means that the rest of this is hazel. So excellent. If I hadn't been doing this series, then I probably never would have thought to check what this was. So that's a good thing about doing Artist Diaries. Now we know that this is hazel. There's a robin singing down there. It's really lovely. And some great tits. It was a really lovely day to go for a walk. The sun was out, and although it was cold, it was very pretty and there were lots of birds singing. However, I did feel like I was struggling to find something that I wanted to paint, so I decided to head up to the canal to see if I could spot any wildlife along the water. There's a moorhen over there. I got to see these swans swimming by and it was lovely, but I did think they were going a little bit fast. It wasn't quite the serene swim of a swan that I expected. And after this one, another one followed, and I thought that was a little bit odd. It turns out there was a boat a little bit further behind, so that moved most of the wildlife along, and I decided to leave the canal and head back to the rest of the reserve. I have no idea what I'm going to paint today. I've enjoyed walking around and there's been some nice things, but I have no idea. I've taken some photos and I'm going to carry on until I head back, but no idea what today's painting is going to be. It was a lovely day. The sun was out and birds were singing and it was really nice. So I don't know why it was so difficult to choose something to paint, but I guess it was just one of those days where nothing really stood out in the way that I thought would make a really nice painting. This was beautiful, but I wasn't sure how I would paint it. I also really like the gorse. I did think that would make a nice painting. However, I painted gorse really not that long ago, so I was struggling, and in the end I settled on this scene. Although even that wasn't particularly inspiring, it was just something that I decided that I would paint after days of indecision. So here we are. I am painting onto 6x8-inch oil painting paper, and I'm starting out with a rough outline in burnt sienna as I do normally. I did change quite a bit about this scene because it just wasn't working for me. I added in the 2 silver birch on either side of the path, and I changed the perspective so that we were focused more on the puddle and the trees rather than looking at the whole scene. And then I just started painting and I hoped for the best. I definitely struggled for inspiration this week,
And like I said, I don't really know why, because it was a really nice day. I think it was just, one of those times where nothing really stood out to me and I just wasn't feeling it. So it took me a lot longer than normal to decide what I was actually going to paint. Usually, I try and do the painting either on the day that I go out or the day after. But this time, I think it took around 5 days to just decide on something and then just sit down and do it because I couldn't motivate myself to paint something. In the past, I definitely feel like if I wasn't that motivated or inspired, I probably wouldn't paint or I would put it off. And I think that was kind of my thinking this week. I just kept putting it off because I couldn't settle on something. I think my thinking around this before has been that if I try and paint when I'm not motivated or I'm not very inspired, it usually ends up taking twice as long because I make a mess of it the first time round when I'm really not feeling it. And then I have to revisit the painting later to fix the mistakes I made before. And usually it's just better to wait until I am feeling slightly more inspired to do the painting. And I guess I still kind of feel that to an extent anyway. I think if I'm feeling really burnt out or I've just been painting for ages and I need a break, then it is better to just have that break and come back to the painting when I'm feeling a little better. But I don't really think that was my problem this week. I think I was just uninspired and I didn't really know what to do and I was procrastinating. And obviously, if I want to do this as a job, like a full time job as an artist, then you can't pick and choose when you're going to paint depending on whether you're feeling motivated or not. You just kind of have to do it. So it was nice this week to practice painting through that uninspiration. That's not a word, is it? It was nice to practice regardless of whether I felt inspired or not. And I'm glad that I did it. I think that's one of the good things about doing paintings this size is that you can work through those times where you're not really feeling in the mood to paint. These paintings don't take a huge amount of time to do. I aim to do them in kind of between 2 to 3 hours, although sometimes it goes a little over that. But that's not too bad in comparison to a huge painting that might take days or weeks to finish. If I was going to be working on something like that, I don't think I would have been able to push through this feeling of just not really wanting to paint anything this week. I think this time around it helped that I just sat down and started painting. I put it off and procrastinated and didn't want to do it. But when I did actually get round to painting, it really wasn't that bad, and I ended up enjoying it. And although it's probably not my favorite painting of this series so far, I don't think it turned out too bad. And it was nice just figuring out how I was gonna change the composition around, or put in the silver birch that I didn't have great references for, or add in a simple background without making it too detailed. I think once I got started and I started figuring out how I was going to fix all of these issues, I just got so wrapped up in the painting that I forgot that I wasn't really that inspired, and it just kind of turned out okay. And I do wonder if it was maybe easier for me to get lost in this painting because I knew it wasn't going to take a huge amount of time, that it was a bit easier to just get inspired and motivated as soon as I started. I don't think this would have been the case if I'd have just started working on a huge painting. I think that frustration and lack of motivation would probably have stayed with me because I would just be thinking about how much painting I had left to do and how much of the canvas I had left to fill. And I think it would have been harder to shake that feeling of not really being that inspired. So I think doing small and simple paintings is a good way of trying to get that inspiration back. If you are going through a bit of a painting slump, it's nice just to do something that you know is not going to take a huge amount of effort or time. And in sitting down and doing this painting, it reminded me of all the things I enjoy about painting and it motivated me to do some more. So hopefully, when it comes round to the next episode of Artist Diaries, I will be feeling full of inspiration and I will have plenty of things that I want to paint at the end of it. So just before the video ends, I thought I'd talk briefly about what I did with this painting. So as I mentioned before, I changed the composition around because it wasn't that inspiring, as you will have heard multiple times by now. So I liked the light in the puddle and I liked the silver birch in the background, and I just wanted to make more of those. So I made the puddle a larger part of the painting, and then I also included two silver birch that I put either side of the path so it'd be a nice focal point. The silver birch in the original image were too far away to really see properly, and on the day I really enjoyed seeing how bright they were in the winter sun, so I definitely wanted to include those in this. For the background trees, I didn't want to put a lot of detail in. I just wanted to have a very, very basic outline of what was going on over there. So I put in an initial color. It's a little on the red side. It's maybe looking a bit more autumnal than I intended, but that provided me with a nice background. And then I just put in a couple of lines for the trees and I blended them out so that they weren't too obvious. I think it works quite well, although I probably would change the color so it was less orangey red next time. I used a palette knife to put in some of the branches of the bushes on the left. I didn't want to spend ages on this, but there was a lot of texture over there, and the palette knife worked to an extent. I do think it's a little bit dark in that corner in comparison to everything else, but it allowed me to make really nice branches without having to paint every single line. I ended up liking this a little bit more than I thought I would. I had visions of just rushing through it because I wasn't really motivated and then really not liking the end result. So the fact that there are parts of this painting that I think work well is definitely a bonus for me. So all that's left to say is I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave comments below if you would like to and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you next time.